Have you been kind your whole life only to become an easy target? As we get older, we're often told to stay warm-hearted, patient, and forgiving. But the truth is, if you don't learn to live a little colder, and more detached, you might just end up drained, manipulated, and exhausted. This video reveals 6 strong reasons why living coldly after 70 means protecting your peace, not being harsh. Each of these 6 insights is rooted in something many of us discover later in life, that being overly available, overly emotional, and overly agreeable can slowly chip away at the life we worked so hard to build. The lessons you'll hear today are not about closing your heart. They're about choosing wisely where you open it. They're about learning how to give without being emptied, how to care without being consumed, and how to remain kind without being used. Stay tuned until the end, because one of the final points might just shift how you see the rest of your life. It's something most people don't realize until it's too late. And once you understand it, you'll wish someone had told you sooner. Let's get started. Number 1. Emotional detachment protects your peace. The older you get, the more precious your peace becomes. And one of the best ways to protect it is by letting go of the emotional entanglements that once felt so necessary. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start choosing where your care goes. After 70, not every argument deserves your energy. Not every family conflict needs your intervention. Not every unkind word needs a response. You've earned the right to keep your heart from being pulled in every direction, especially by people who expect more from you than they're willing to give. Sometimes we confuse love with obligation. But real love doesn't ask you to lose sleep over someone else's chaos. It doesn't demand you fix what was never yours to carry. When you begin to detach emotionally, what you're really doing is drawing a quiet line between what affects you and what doesn't. And that line becomes the boundary that preserves your sanity. You can still care about someone without absorbing their pain. You can listen without offering a solution. You can be present without being drained. Take Robert for example. He's 81 and used to be the emotional rock for his extended family. If there was an issue, a disagreement, a hurt feeling, a birthday missed, he was the first one called. For years, he responded right away. Tried to mediate, tried to smooth things over. But he started to realize that his own days were growing shorter. And yet, so much of his energy was being spent on problems that weren't his. These days, Robert listens, but he doesn't fix. He supports, but he doesn't chase. And in doing so, he's found a peace that had been missing for decades. Living with emotional detachment means accepting that not every battle is yours to fight. It means walking away from drama even when you're invited in. It means choosing silence over stress, distance over damage. When you live like this, people might say you've become cold, but what they really mean is you've stopped being convenient. You've stopped being a sponge for their emotions and started being the protector of your own. And that shift, that's where freedom begins. Because when you stop carrying everyone else's emotional baggage, your own path gets lighter, your mornings feel calmer, your nights grow quieter, and that peace, the kind that doesn't shake with every text or tremble at every phone call, is worth everything. Number 2. Saying no without guilt preserves your energy. After 70, your time and energy are not just valuable, they're sacred. And one of the strongest forms of self-respect you can practice is the ability to say no without drowning in guilt. For decades, many of us were trained to be agreeable, to accommodate, to say yes, even when we meant no. But that kind of living leaves you tired, used up, and quietly resentful. Living coldly means knowing that you're no longer here to be everything for everyone. And that's not selfish, that's survival. Every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to something you do want, like rest, peace, or simply doing nothing at all. You have a limited number of days and you get to choose how they're spent. You don't owe your time to every invitation. You don't owe your attention to every request, and you certainly don't owe your energy to people who don't appreciate it. Think about Sandra, 76, who spent most of her adult life as the yes person in her family. Need a ride to the airport? She'd go hosting Thanksgiving. Even when she was exhausted, she'd do it. Babysitting at the last minute, even when she had plans of her own, she'd cancel them. But last year something in her shifted. She began to understand that always saying yes had quietly stolen years of her joy. Now Sandra says no, and she says it kindly, firmly, and without explaining herself. And you know what happened? The world kept spinning. The people who truly cared adapted, and she finally got some peace. You don't need a reason to say no. You don't need to justify, over-explain, or soften your boundaries so others feel more comfortable. The people who love and respect you won't need a detailed excuse. They'll understand. And the ones who don't, well, they've been benefiting from your lack of boundaries for far too long. There's a quiet kind of strength in a simple no. Not a cold shoulder, not a bitter refusal, but a clear, steady, unapologetic no. That strength builds a life with space. Space for rest, reflection, joy, and health. When you stop feeling guilty for protecting yourself, your energy begins to return. You find yourself waking up with less tension, going to bed with fewer regrets, and filling your days with things that nourish you, not just others. Living coldly doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. You care for yourself first so you have something left to give. And when you learn to say no from a place of love, not fear, you start to reclaim the life that's been waiting for you all along. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Number 3, selective empathy guards your mental health. There's a quiet shift that happens after 70. You begin to realize that while empathy is a beautiful trait, giving too much of it too freely, too constantly can slowly unravel your own mental well-being. Selective empathy isn't about turning your heart off. It's about deciding where your heart goes, how often, and for how long. Because not everyone deserves the full weight of your concern. And not every problem is yours to emotionally carry. When you allow yourself to feel deeply for everyone, you become a vessel for their pain, their fear, their chaos. And over time, without even realizing it, you start to carry it like it's your own. That invisible burden shows up as fatigue, sadness, anxiety, even physical illness. People come to you because they know you care, but they also come because they know you'll take on more than you should. Living coldly means learning that empathy has limits, and yours must be honored, too. Let me tell you about Gerald. He's 83 now and one of the kindest people you'd ever meet. But for decades, Gerald would internalize the pain of everyone around him. Friends struggling financially, neighbors in conflict, family members with failing relationships. He carried it all like it was his personal mission to fix it, to heal it, to hold it until it passed. But eventually, his health began to suffer. He wasn't sleeping, his blood pressure soared, and he began to lose the lightness in his spirit. One day his doctor said something that stuck with him. "You can care, Gerald, but you don't have to collapse." That day, he gave himself permission to care less. Just enough to stay kind, but not so much that he lost himself. Selective empathy means listening without absorbing. It means offering support without sacrificing your peace. It means letting others handle their own responsibilities and consequences without stepping in to rescue them. When someone is always in crisis, always in need, always pulling on your emotions, they're not looking for partnership. They're looking for someone to dump their weight on. And after 70, you've earned the right to say no more. When you start to filter who gets access to your empathy, you begin to see life differently. You're less reactive, less overwhelmed. You start having more room in your mind for the things that truly matter. Your health, your joy, your hobbies, your legacy, and those who genuinely care about. You will understand your boundaries, not question them. There's grace in this kind of coldness, a quiet, protective grace. Because you're not shutting people out. You're keeping your mind clear, your emotions stable, and your spirit intact. You're giving yourself the space to be happy without constantly drowning in everyone else's sorrow. And that space, that's where your mental health begins to thrive again. Number 4, guarding your time reinforces self-worth. Time becomes sacred after 70. Every hour carries more weight. Every day feels more valuable. And every moment has the power to lift you or drain you. That's why one of the most important things you must stop giving away so easily is your time. Guarding your time isn't about being selfish. It's about finally understanding how precious it really is. When you live coldly, you're not pushing people away. You're just no longer offering your hours to things or people that don't deserve them. Think about how often you've said yes to something only to regret it while it's happening. Sitting through conversations you didn't enjoy. Running errands that weren't yours. Attending gatherings that left you feeling more alone than connected. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that being generous with your time makes you a good person. But being intentional with your time, that's what makes you a wise one. Take Helen for example. She's 78 and used to fill her calendar with every invite that came her way. Church meetings, family obligations, social clubs. She was always out, always involved. But she started noticing something at the end of those long days. She didn't feel fulfilled. She felt depleted. One day, she sat down with her planner and asked herself a simple question. What here actually brings me joy? The answer, not much. So she started saying no, clearing space in choosing her moments with care. These days, Helen's schedule is lighter, but her spirit is fuller. Your time should reflect your values. It should nourish your body, your mind, your heart. If it doesn't do that, it's okay to step back. You don't have to explain. You don't need permission. You don't owe your time to every call, every text, every favor, or every event. People who truly respect you will understand that your hours matter and they'll never make you feel guilty for guarding them. You also start to recognize which relationships are one-sided. The people who only call when they need something. The ones who never ask how you're doing but always expect you to listen. When you guard your time, you shine a light on what's been draining you. And once you see it clearly, it's impossible to go back. There's peace in a quiet day with no obligations. There's healing in choosing how to spend your morning instead of letting someone else dictate it. When you stop letting others consume your time, you begin to reclaim your worth. Because every time you say, I'm not available for that, what you're really saying is, I value myself. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Number 5, saying no protects your personal boundaries. There's a certain strength that comes with age. Not in the body necessarily, but in the spirit. And one of the clearest signs of that strength is the ability to say no firmly, kindly, and without guilt. After 70, your personal boundaries become more than just preferences. They become shields. Shields that guard your peace, your dignity, and your freedom to live life on your own terms. Living coldly means understanding that protecting your space isn't rude. It's essential. Too many people confuse kindness with availability. If you've always been dependable, always the one others could count on, then over time, you might have felt the slow erosion of your own needs. You say yes when you want to say no. You agree to help when your body begs you to rest. You tolerate behavior that crosses the line just to keep the peace. But peace that comes at the expense of your boundaries isn't peace at all. It's quiet surrender. Let me tell you about Louis. He's 81 now, and for most of his life, he was what people called the rock of the family. Reliable, calm, always saying yes. But over time, he started noticing that his generosity wasn't being respected. It was being expected. If he ever declined an invitation, people were surprised. If he voiced a concern, they brushed it off. One day, Louis stopped answering calls that only came with demands. He started saying no, even if it disappointed someone. And something incredible happened. He felt free. Not angry, not bitter, just free. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. You choose who gets in and how far they're allowed to go. Saying no doesn't mean you're cold-hearted. It means you're finally protecting what you've spent a lifetime building. Your energy, your values, your peace. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. People learn quickly who they can and cannot take advantage of. When you begin to say no with confidence, you'll notice that the users start to disappear, and that's a blessing, not a loss. You also begin to recognize that your boundaries are a reflection of self-respect. You're not here to entertain guilt. You're not here to serve every request or solve every problem. You're here to enjoy the years you've earned. And that means drawing clear lines and standing by them. There's courage in this kind of coldness. Not the kind that pushes others away, but the kind that finally draws you back to yourself. Because at this stage of life, protecting your boundaries isn't optional. It's survival. And every time you honor those boundaries, you reclaim another piece of your power. Number 6. Detaching from outcomes brings true peace. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you stop trying to control everything. After 70, one of the most freeing things you can do is let go of the need to manage how others behave, how situations unfold, or how people react to your choices. Living coldly isn't about indifference. It's about emotional clarity. It's the understanding that your peace no longer depends on things going your way. And that in itself is a kind of mastery. When we're younger, we pour energy into things we can't control. We try to fix people who don't want to change. We overthink our words, hoping they'll land just right. We dwell on mistakes, on regrets, on what ifs. But with time, it becomes clear. No amount of worry has ever improved an outcome. No amount of overfunctioning has ever brought lasting peace. Detachment isn't giving up, it's stepping back so you can breathe. Eleanor, who's now 84, used to worry constantly about her children's decisions. She'd lose sleep over their finances, their relationships, their choices she couldn't agree with. But one day, she realized something. Her worry wasn't helping them. It was hurting her. So, she made a decision. She'd offer advice when asked. Love them unconditionally and trust that they'd figure things out. Since then, her mind is quieter, her body feels lighter, and she smiles more. Not because life is perfect, but because she stopped trying to control what never belonged to her. When you detach from outcomes, you start to reclaim your time, your energy, and your joy. You no longer feel the need to chase approval, fix everyone's problems, or make sure everything runs smoothly. You learn to let conversations end without resolution. You allow others to be wrong about you. You stop explaining yourself where it's not needed. This doesn't make you cold-hearted. It makes you wise. It means your emotional thermostat is no longer controlled by other people's behavior. Whether someone is grateful or not, polite or not, present or not, you stay grounded. You stay steady. You no longer spiral because someone else is spinning. That's what it means to live coldly, to live with emotional independence. At this stage, peace becomes the priority. And peace isn't found in control. It's found in surrender. Not the surrender of values, but the surrender of outcomes. You show up with love, with honesty, with effort, but you release the need for results. That kind of release isn't easy, but it's transformative. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. For final thoughts, as we wrap up this video, take a moment to reflect on what we've explored. Living coldly after 70 doesn't mean shutting down your heart or walking through life with walls up. It means choosing clarity over confusion, peace over people-pleasing, and boundaries over burnout. It's about finally putting your well-being at the center of your decisions. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you've started caring more about the right things. What stood out to you the most? Which of these 6 reasons resonated with where you are in life right now? Maybe it was the idea of stepping away from overgiving. Maybe it was the power of silence. Or perhaps it was that deep truth about detaching from what you can't control. Whatever it was, hold on to it. These aren't just ideas. They're tools. Tools you can start using today to live with more strength, more peace, and more authenticity. There's a kind of beauty that only shows up when you stop chasing and start choosing. Choosing what aligns with your values. Choosing when to engage and when to step back. Choosing how to spend your precious time and who gets to share it with you. Living this way isn't easy at first. It requires courage. But with each boundary you protect, each pause you take before reacting, each moment you honor your needs, it gets easier. And more than that, it gets deeply rewarding. Because this stage of life isn't a winding down, it's a refining. You're not here to prove anything anymore. You've earned your place. You've lived, learned, lost, and loved. And now you get to decide what matters and what doesn't. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us and so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful,